it will be the largest penalty ever paid by a financial firm to settle a case with the U.S. government. America's largest bank, JP Chase, has reportedly agreed to a $13 billion settlement with the U.S. Department of Justice over the collapsing value of its mortgage bonds in 2008, a calamity that rippled through financial markets around the globe. Liling joins us now with all the details. Liling, how much does this hurt JP Chase?
Michelle, if the deal is finalized, $13 billion amounts to more than half of what JP Morgan's profits were last year. So the bank will feel this. This settlement also sends a clear message to Wall Street's big banks to act more responsibly and reinforces the message to Main Street that the institutions that played a role in the 2008 crash will be held accountable. The tentative $13 billion deal is a bit more than what JP Chase was prepared to fork out. America's largest bank offered a possible $11 billion settlement to end the civil investigation, refusing to go higher unless the Justice Department dropped its criminal probe into the bank's sale of bad residential mortgages. But the DOJ said no deal, a win for U.S. taxpayers over Wall Street banks.
Two factors principally were a surprise. Number one, the size of the settlement. $13 billion is an extraordinary amount, an unprecedented amount. And then the second thing that's a significant surprise even today is that it doesn't resolve all of JP Morgan's problems, because the California criminal prosecution still goes forward.
Shareholder advocate Mark Rifkin says this shows the government taking a stronger stance to make big banks accountable for their actions. Under the tentative deal, the bank will pay $4 billion in compensation to unspecified consumers and another $9 billion in payments and fines. As painful as this penalty will be for the bank, JP Morgan was prepared.
The $13 billion is already covered by the $23 billion legal reserve that they have set up. And just about 10 days ago, they added nearly $9.5 billion to this reserve. And that led to JP Chase's first quarterly loss in about 5 years. And certainly the first loss that they've had in the whole time that Jamie Dimon has been CEO.
Banking analyst Eric Oja says JP Morgan is generating healthy profits right now, about $20 to $25 billion a year, which makes the fines more manageable. But this isn't an end to JP Morgan's headaches. The bank must still defend itself in an ongoing criminal investigation. The big question is, of course, what next? If this deal goes through, eyes will certainly be on that criminal investigation, and expectations are that JP Chase will try to reach another settlement to avoid a trial. Michelle?
Now, Liling, much of these subprime mortgage deals were inherited from JP Morgan's acquisitions of Bear Stearns and Washington Mutual, companies that it was urged to acquire by authorities in 2008 during the financial crisis. As you recall, the Treasury and the Fed pushed for JP Morgan to buy Bear and then later Washington Mutual, hoping that this would prevent a broader meltdown in the financial markets. So given this, how much accountability should JP Morgan assume?
Well, that depends on who you ask, Michelle. Excuse me. Jamie Dimon has maintained that it should not be held accountable for these loans that were made by Bear Stearns and Washington Mutual before they were acquired by JP Chase. And as you mentioned, the government did urge JP Morgan to acquire these two companies at the height of the financial crisis in order to mitigate losses. Still, the government officials have said that Dimon was aware of these potential liabilities, and this is a sentiment shared by Mark Rifkin, with whom we spoke earlier. He said that that's the reason why these two companies were sold at such low prices. The other side of the argument is a sentiment shared by S&P analyst Eric Oja, and he said that JP Morgan should not be held accountable for criminal behavior that had occurred prior to the acquisition. But the government wants its pound of flesh. And that said, authorities have also noted that they did take into account that these loans were made prior to the acquisition. Still, the extent of how this factored into that $13 billion tentative settlement, we still do not know that. Michelle?
It's a big pound of flesh, Liling. $13 billion worth. Thanks so much for that update.